a white woman gives birth to triplets of black children. Her husband thought she had cheated on him, and he kicked her out of the house. However, years later, when the truth is revealed, he stands frozen. The truth revealed in an unexpected way that he can't digest. What he does next to his wife and the triplets will leave you compelled to share your thoughts on him. Welcome to Untold Tales, and today I am delighted to share a new story with you. At the hospital, the once joyful atmosphere surrounding the arrival of newborns dimmed when Sophia delivered her 3 black triplets. The room, filled with excitement moments earlier, fell silent as Lucas, Sophia's husband, stood frozen, his eyes locked on the babies. His face darkened, disbelief quickly giving way to fury. He stared at Sophia with full anger, his gaze burning through her. Sophia, still weak and trying to gather her breath, opened her mouth to speak, but before she could get a word out, Lucas cut her off. His voice was bitter, filled with venom. "So the truth is out now, huh? Don't even think about coming back to my house. I don't want to see you or those babies ever again. Go to that black man you had an affair with. Let him raise those kids. You belong with him, not me." His words were cruel, sharp, and cut through Sophia like a blade. She lay there, helpless, as Lucas stormed out, his anger simmering dangerously beneath the surface. Outside, he opened the trunk of his car and began hurling Sophia's belongings out, one after another, onto the pavement near the hospital gate. Clothes, bags, anything he could grab were tossed furiously, his rage manifesting in every movement. It was clear no man could act rationally after seeing his wife deliver someone else's children. Lucas, who had been a loyal and loving husband, devoted to Sophia, was now shattered. His trust was broken, and all he could feel was anger and the need for revenge. His world, once built on love and commitment, had been destroyed in an instant. But little did he know that the truth was waiting for him in an unexpected way, one that would leave him frozen, questioning everything he thought he knew. Later, when Lucas shared his grief with his family, everyone was in disbelief. His father was speechless, shaking his head, and his siblings struggled to offer any comfort. But one person's reaction was different: his mother. She sat still, her face calm, not showing the shock or anger that gripped the others. It was as if she wasn't surprised at all, as if she had been expecting this. Lucas, lost in his own hurt and anger, didn't notice. He couldn't see the quiet tension in his mother's eyes, or the way she seemed to know something no one else did. She remained silent, holding back a truth that she couldn't share yet. Fear gripped her, especially of how her husband and Lucas would judge her if they knew. The secret had the power to tear her family apart, and she wasn't ready to face the consequences. So, she kept quiet, afraid of the fallout. Lucas' family tried to calm him, offering words of comfort and hope. They reassured him that time would heal the pain and that everything would eventually make sense. But none of them, unaware of the shocking truth still hidden, understood the depth of Lucas' rage. While they soothed him with promises of better days, Lucas's mind was consumed with thoughts of revenge, unable to shake the betrayal that haunted him. At the hospital, Sophia was now alone with her newborn triplets. Her body still ached from the delivery, her hands sore, unable to move freely. She couldn't understand what had gone wrong. She called Lucas countless times, but each time, her calls went unanswered. Her messages were ignored, leaving her feeling more isolated. She had nowhere to go, feeling alone and helpless. Without Lucas' support, taking care of herself and the newborns was challenging both physically and mentally. As the thoughts racing in her mind, she tried to control her tears, but she could feel the warm water sliding down her cheeks, a silent testament to her struggle. Lucas had completely cut her off, and there was nothing she could do while trapped in the hospital. Her only distraction came from caring for her children, feeding them, holding them. It was the only thing that kept her mind from spiraling. But every time she looked at their dark skin, the same question resurfaced. How had this happened? What was the explanation for these babies who looked nothing like her or Lucas? As the mystery consumed her, she knew she had to take action. She couldn't let the confusion destroy her completely. Desperate, she called her mother, Elizabeth, for help. Within hours, Elizabeth arrived at the hospital, her face full of concern. She hadn't asked many questions. She knew Sophia was already overwhelmed. The joy of childbirth had quickly turned into something much darker, and Elizabeth could see the strain it had put on her daughter. Elizabeth immediately took charge, gathering Sophia's belongings and loading them into her car. She knew Sophia couldn't return to the home she shared with Lucas, so she brought everything to her own house, returning to the hospital to offer more help. Sophia, emotionally wrecked, struggled to cope with the newborns. The sheer exhaustion from caring for 3 babies at once, combined with the weight of Lucas's abandonment, was too much. Elizabeth stayed close, making sure Sophia ate, rested, and fed the babies on time. Sophia was physically there, but emotionally she was fading. The first few days were like a living nightmare. The grief of losing Lucas hit Sophia like a tidal wave, leaving her in tears constantly. It was supposed to be the happiest time in her life, but instead it had broken her. She had always imagined the birth of her children as a joyous moment for both her and Lucas. But now, that dream was shattered. She couldn't even bond with the triplets properly because her mind was so consumed by grief and confusion. Depression gripped her, and she struggled to take care of herself, let alone her children. Despite everything, Sophia held on to a small glimmer of hope. She believed that once Lucas knew the truth, once he learned what had really happened, he would come back to her. She was sure that his love for her still existed somewhere beneath the anger. That hope was destroyed when her phone buzzed with a message from the bank. Sophia's heart sank as she read the notification. Lucas had closed their joint account. All the money was gone. Her savings, the money she had worked so hard to put aside, had vanished. Lucas had taken everything. The betrayal hit her harder than anything else. It was her money. She had contributed most of it, while Lucas had barely put anything into the account. He had always left the financial responsibilities to her, and now he had stolen it all. Sophia's hands shook as she stared at the message. It wasn't just about the money. It was about Lucas trying to destroy her. He had kicked her out of the house, knowing full well she had nowhere else to go. And now he had stolen the one thing she had left. He didn't care about her or the babies. In that moment, all the hope she had clung to disappeared. She didn't cry this time. Instead, a cold determination settled in her heart. She would not let Lucas win. She called the police and reported the theft. She knew it wouldn't be easy to get the money back, but she had to try. She also called the bank, but it was too late. The account had been emptied down to the last penny. The police opened an investigation, but their efforts quickly stalled when they discovered that Lucas had fled the state. He had disappeared without a trace, leaving Sophia and the triplets to fend for themselves. Sophia realized then that she couldn't waste any more energy on Lucas. He had made his choice, and she had to make hers. All that mattered now were her children and rebuilding her life. Sophia knew she couldn't waste time dwelling on her broken marriage. Her children were her only priority now, and she had to figure out how to support them. She wasted no time searching for work, determined to provide a stable life for her triplets and her mother. It wasn't easy, though. The job she found paid little, just enough to cover the basics. But for Sophia, it was a start. She worked tirelessly, sometimes taking on shifts that left her exhausted, but she had no choice. Every cent mattered, and her drive to give her children a better future kept her going. As the triplets grew older and started school, Sophia's burden only increased. She took on even more work, juggling 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. The sleepless nights and constant exhaustion became routine, but Sophia never complained. She was too focused on her mission. She did everything in her power to shield her children from her struggles, ensuring they never went to bed hungry or without the things they needed. Yet, the weight of her circumstances bore down on her every day. There were moments when she felt like she couldn't go on, but every time she saw her children's faces, it gave her the strength to push through. While Sophia toiled away, struggling to provide for her children, Lucas was living a very different life. He had quickly moved on, finding a new girlfriend at his workplace. The money he had stolen from Sophia's joint account now fueled his indulgent lifestyle. Expensive dinners, lavish dates, weekend getaways. Lucas spared no expense when it came to pleasing his new girlfriend. He immersed himself in a life of luxury and fun, using the stolen money to forget about the responsibilities he had left behind. It was as though Lucas had erased Sophia and the triplets from his memory. The man who had once vowed to love and protect his wife had now abandoned her entirely. His actions weren't just selfish, they were cruel. He spent lavishly while Sophia worked herself to the bone to support the family he had deserted. The contrast between their lives couldn't have been more stark. Lucas reveled in his newfound freedom, enjoying the thrill of his new relationship, completely detached from the pain he had caused. Meanwhile, Sophia devoted herself entirely to raising the triplets, pouring all her energy into giving them the best life she could, despite the heartache she carried. As the triplets grew older and began to understand more about the world around them, the questions started coming. Their curiosity was innocent at first. Simple questions about why they didn't look like their mother, or why they were different from the other kids at school. But as they grew, the questions became more pointed. "Why don't we look like you, Mom? Where's our dad?" Sophia did her best to deflect these questions, redirecting her children's attention to other things, games, activities, anything that would distract them from the truth she couldn't bear to tell. Each question, however, chipped away at her. She knew the day would come when she couldn't avoid their curiosity any longer. The triplets were smart, and their questions were becoming harder to dodge. Every time they asked about their father, Sophia felt a pang of guilt. She knew that eventually she would have to give them the answers they were looking for, but she wasn't ready. How could she explain the mess that had torn their family apart? How could she tell them that their father had abandoned them without making them feel unloved? Sophia hated lying to her children, but the truth felt unbearable. She feared how they would react to the knowledge of Lucas's betrayal. After leaving Sophia and the triplets behind, Lucas thought he was living a better life with his new girlfriend. He spent the money he had stolen from Sophia on fancy dinners, trips, and fun nights out. For a while, it seemed like everything was going well. But Lucas didn't realize that his new girlfriend had her own plans. She wasn't with him for love. She was with him for his money. At first, it seemed harmless. She convinced him to buy her expensive things and started helping him manage his money. Lucas trusted her completely, never suspecting anything was wrong. But slowly, she began taking money from his accounts, just like he had done to Sophia. Lucas was too caught up in his new life to notice. Then one day, he checked his account, and everything was gone. His girlfriend had taken all the money and disappeared. The same thing he had done to Sophia had now happened to him. He was left shocked and broken. The betrayal hit him hard, and the guilt from how he had treated Sophia only made things worse. Lucas soon fell into a deep depression. The stress from losing all his money and being betrayed ruined his health. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and felt lost. The karma he thought he had avoided had finally caught up with him, leaving him with nothing. Lucas sat slumped on the couch, his eyes vacant, staring into nothing. His health had taken a steep decline since his girlfriend had stolen his money and left him. The weight of it all, the betrayal, the guilt over how he had treated Sophia, the stress of having nothing, pressed down on him. He barely had the strength to function anymore. His mother, seeing the condition her son was in, couldn't bear it any longer. She had kept her secret for years, but now, with Lucas on the verge of breaking completely, she knew she had no choice. Seeing her son so drained, defeated, and struggling, she knew she couldn't keep the truth hidden any longer. Sitting beside him, she hesitated, her hands trembling, but there was no turning back now. "Lucas," she said softly, her voice breaking, "you're not just white. You have black heritage, just like it's part of your newborn triplets. They are your children, Lucas. Your blood runs through them." Lucas blinked, frozen. "What? What are you saying?" His mind raced, trying to make sense of the words that had just shattered his reality. His mother swallowed hard, her eyes filled with guilt and regret. She knew this moment would come, but facing it was more painful than she had imagined. She explained that there was something about his past he needed to know, something she had buried out of fear and shame. She told him that many years ago, before he was born, she had an affair with a black man. The words hung in the air. Her voice faltered as she recounted the fear she had felt when she found out she was pregnant. She had been terrified, not just of what people would say, but of how her husband, Lucas' father, would react. She had feared the consequences, terrified that the truth would destroy her family and her reputation. Every night during her pregnancy, she had lain awake, consumed with dread, certain that once the baby was born, everyone would know. But when Lucas was born, he came out looking white. Her relief had been overwhelming. She had stared at his tiny face, examining every detail, searching for any sign that her secret might still come out. But there had been none. Lucas looked like her, and no one ever suspected a thing. She had breathed a sigh of relief, convincing herself that the past was behind her. She could go on living as if nothing had ever happened. Lucas sat there, frozen, his mind racing. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His mother couldn't bear to meet his eyes after revealing the truth. Shame and guilt weighed heavily on her as she stood there, her hands trembling. She felt the enormity of her betrayal, knowing she had kept this secret for so long. And now, seeing Lucas' pain, the regret overwhelmed her. With a bowed head and a face full of sorrow, she muttered a quiet apology under her breath. Unable to say more, she turned and quietly left the house, her steps slow and heavy, leaving Lucas alone with the truth and the broken pieces of their relationship. Lucas sat motionless, unable to speak, unable to process the truth. His mother's secret hit him like a tidal wave, and he didn't know what to think or feel. His world, which had already crumbled, now seemed to shatter even further. He filled with regret and realized what he had lost and how cruel he had been to Sophia and their own children because of this deep misunderstanding. The weight of the truth crushed him, and all he could think about was the harm he had caused. He had spent years resenting Sophia and the triplets, blinded by his ignorance, while Sophia had been fighting every day to provide for them. She had struggled through hardships alone, all while carrying the burden of his abandonment and betrayal. Lucas couldn't bear the thought of what Sophia had endured because of his actions. He was consumed by the enormity of his mistakes, and the question of how to apologize haunted him. Could he ever make things right after causing so much damage? The burning question was how Sophia would react. Would she even listen to him after all the pain he had caused her? Would she have it in her heart to forgive him for abandoning her and the triplets? These thoughts tormented Lucas as he wrestled with his guilt. Lucas had never once taken any of the triplets in his arms, not even when they were babies. He had refused to acknowledge them, looking at them only through the lens of his resentment and bitterness. Now, knowing the truth about his own heritage, he was filled with regret for every moment he had turned away from them. The triplets had grown up without their father's love, and that reality crushed him. How could he face them now, after treating them with such coldness and disdain? The thought of meeting their eyes, of seeing the pain and confusion he had caused, made his chest tighten. He wondered if they would ever be able to forgive him, or if the damage was too deep. But Lucas knew that he had to try. He couldn't live with the regret gnawing at him without at least attempting to make amends. Apologizing to Sophia was his first step, but his greatest fear was facing the triplets. They had grown up thinking their father had rejected them, and now that he knew the truth, he couldn't undo the years of hurt. He had a long road ahead of him, and he wasn't sure if Sophia or the triplets would ever be able to accept him again. All he knew was that he couldn't run from this any longer. The truth had been revealed, and it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions, no matter how painful it would be. Before confronting Sophia, Lucas couldn't resist the pull to see his children, even if from afar. He started visiting the park where they played after school, standing at a distance, blending into the background so no one would notice him. He watched the triplets laughing, running, and playing without a care in the world. Seeing them so full of life made his heart ache with regret. These were the children he had rejected, the ones he had turned away from out of hatred for something that had never been their fault. Watching them now, Lucas realized how much he had missed. He remembered when they were born, how he couldn't even bring himself to hold them, how he had looked at them with disgust because of his own misconceptions. But now, seeing them, it was clear how wrong he had been. They were happy, full of energy, and thriving under Sophia's care. She had done everything for them, given them love, stability, and a life free from the chaos Lucas had caused. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had missed their first steps, their first words, all the little moments that made up their early years. He had thrown it all away because of his blind anger and pride. As the days passed, these visits to the park became a painful routine. Lucas would stand there watching his children grow from a distance, too ashamed to approach them. He longed to run to them, to tell them he was sorry, to try to be the father he had never been, but fear held him back. What would they think of him now? Would they even recognize him, or would they see him as a stranger? Every time he thought of stepping forward, his feet felt like they were stuck in concrete. The guilt weighed him down, paralyzing him, but the regret was too much to bear. He knew he had to do something, but he didn't know how to start. The triplets' 5th birthday was approaching, and Lucas heard from a neighbor that Sophia was planning a small celebration. This only deepened his sense of loss. A birthday was a milestone, and he hadn't been there for any of their previous ones. The thought of Sophia organizing the party, making the arrangements, and celebrating this important day without him made his chest tighten. It wasn't just about the children, it was also about Sophia. She had been forced to shoulder everything alone, raising the triplets, dealing with the emotional weight of his abandonment, and moving forward while he had been stuck in his anger and bitterness. He had failed her in every way, and now he didn't know if he could ever make it right. On the day of the party, Lucas found himself outside Sophia's house. Balloons decorated the front porch, and the sound of children laughing echoed through the open windows. His heart raced as he stood there, staring at the door. With shaky hands, Lucas reached for the doorknob. His mind raced with the possible reactions he might face. Would Sophia scream at him? Would she slam the door in his face? And what about the triplets? He was their father, but he felt like a stranger. He didn't deserve their love or forgiveness, but he knew he couldn't continue living in the shadows of his mistakes. He had to try, no matter how painful it would be. The door opened slowly, and Lucas stepped inside. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at him. There, in the middle of the living room, stood Sophia, her eyes widening in shock. Lucas stood there, frozen, guilt and sadness written all over his face. He didn't know what to say. How could he possibly explain himself after everything he had done? He had caused Sophia so much pain, and now, standing in front of her, he felt the full weight of his actions. Sophia's face showed a mixture of emotions, shock, disbelief, and deep hurt. The tension in the room was palpable. Neither of them spoke, but everything they had been through was laid bare in that moment. The pain, the betrayal, the years of lost time. They stood there, staring at each other, both unsure of what to do next, but knowing that this confrontation had been inevitable. After several long, tense seconds of silence, Sophia's face hardened as she looked at Lucas standing in front of her. With a voice thick with bitterness, she broke the silence. "Get out," she said coldly, her eyes blazing. "I don't want to see you ever again. Stay away from me and my kids." Lucas' heart sank as her words hit him like a punch to the chest. He had expected anger, but seeing the pain in her eyes, hearing the venom in her voice, made him realize just how deeply he had hurt Sophia. He opened his mouth to speak, but Sophia wasn't finished. "Do you have any idea what you put me through? What you put our children through?" Her voice cracked with emotion. "For 5 years I've watched them grow up without a father. They've asked me why you never came to see them, and I had no answers. Do you know how that feels?" Her voice shifted, turning sharp with anger as the pain transformed into bitterness. Lucas stood frozen, his heart breaking as Sophia poured out years of hurt. He could see how much she had suffered, and it tore him apart inside. His eyes filled with tears, and he could barely bring himself to speak. How could he ever ask her for forgiveness after everything he had done? How could she ever forgive him? "I'm so sorry, Sophia," he finally managed to say, his voice trembling. I didn't know, I didn't understand. I was wrong. I was so wrong." Sophia shook her head, her arms folded across her chest defensively. "Sorry isn't enough, Lucas. Not after everything. You can't just show up here and expect me to forget the years of pain you caused." Lucas took a step closer, desperation in his voice. "Please just listen to me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I've messed up. But there's something you need to know. It's about why I acted the way I did." Sophia remained silent, her eyes narrowing slightly. She didn't want to hear his excuses, but something in his voice made her hesitate. Lucas took a deep breath, knowing this was his only chance. He began to explain everything. The secret his mother had revealed, how his entire life had been built on a lie he never knew existed. He told Sophia about his mother's affair with a black man, how she had kept it hidden for years, even from him. How she had feared what people would think, and how she had never told him the truth about his heritage until recently. "I didn't know, Sophia. I didn't know that I carried the same genes. When the triplets were born, I just didn't understand. I thought you had cheated on me. I thought..." His voice broke as tears streamed down his face. "I'm so sorry for everything. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. All I can do now is try to make things right." Sophia stared at him, her face unreadable. She could see the regret and pain in his eyes, the weight of the truth that had shattered his life. But even knowing the truth, she wasn't sure if she could ever let go of the hurt he had caused. Her heart had been broken too many times. "I don't know, Lucas," she said softly, her voice shaking. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you. The love I had for you, it's gone. You destroyed it." Lucas' heart ached at her words, but he nodded slowly, understanding the depth of her pain. "I know, Sophia. I don't expect you to forgive me, not right away. But please, let me be a part of their lives. Let me be there for the triplets. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I've changed. Just, please, give me a chance." Sophia hesitated, torn between her anger and the soft voice inside her that still wanted to believe in the man she had once loved. She had raised the triplets on her own, and she had done everything to protect them. But seeing Lucas now, broken and vulnerable, made her question whether it was fair to keep him away from his children. "It's not that easy, Lucas," she said, her voice firm but calmer now. "You don't just get to walk back into our lives like nothing happened. You have a long way to go if you want to be part of their lives." Lucas' heart swelled with gratitude. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. He reached out and gently took her hand, his voice filled with emotion. "Thank you, Sophia. I'll show you. I'll be the father they deserve." Over the next few weeks, Lucas began making small, meaningful gestures to reconnect with the triplets. He started by attending their school events, watching from a distance as they played, trying to get used to the idea of being in their lives. He introduced himself to them as a friend, careful not to overwhelm them. Slowly, he built a bond with the children, and before long, they started looking forward to his visits, seeing him as their new best friend. Sophia watched all of this unfold quietly, unsure of how to feel. Part of her was still angry, still hurt by everything that had happened. But she couldn't deny that Lucas was making an effort. He was there for the triplets in a way she hadn't expected. She saw the way the children lit up when they saw him, the way they talked about him after he left. Eventually, after months of small, quiet steps, Sophia allowed Lucas to become more involved in their lives. She watched as he built a relationship with the children, as he became the father they had always needed. It wasn't easy, but over time, Sophia saw the genuine change in him. One day, as they stood together at a park, watching the triplets play, Lucas and Sophia found themselves side by side. Lucas glanced over at her, the guilt and sadness that had once consumed him replaced by quiet determination. "I love you," he said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. Sophia looked at him, her heart full of conflicting emotions, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope. "I love you too," she whispered, her voice barely audible. It would take time, but they were finally on the path to healing, together as a family. The triplets would eventually learn the truth about their father, and while the road had been long and painful, Lucas was determined to prove that he was worthy of their love. In the end, a broken relationship had been mended through understanding, effort, and love. What do you think about Sophia? Did she make the right choice by accepting Lucas back into their lives? We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'll be back with more stories like this, so you can support us by subscribing to our channel and liking this video. This helps us understand what our audience wants more of. If you can share this, it would be wonderful to spread smiles to your loved ones. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.